As I read Pennsylvania's recent list of disciplinary cases against counselors, the two most common causes of these cases were dual relationships and crimes of moral turpitude. Those crimes of moral turpitude were usually vague. That's all the detail that was given, but they usually carried pretty significant disciplinary actions. And in a lot of those cases, the counselor would voluntarily surrender their license instead of being stripped. So these were very serious in most cases, but the dual relationships were the most common. And the main theme that I took from this list was the difficulty of setting professional boundaries. I think a lot of counselors are probably prone to seek relationship, to seek connection, and that's something that needs to be done intentionally, is to draw that line and not allow these relationships to progress to a inappropriate level. Um, and there was an article I found from Vistas, which is sponsored by the ACA. This was written by C. Emmanuel Ahia and Peter Bacone. And basically, they were analyzing these cases across many states. And they confirmed that dual relationships are by a pretty significant margin, the most common cause of disciplinary action. One thing that surprised me in that article and from reviewing the cases was the lack of confidentiality breaches. According to that article, those make up about 1% of disciplinary cases. That was probably recency bias on my part because we've been focusing on that so much recently. But our text did say that those cases are rare and usually unintentional. But there was a case that I saw in Pennsylvania of a confidentiality breach, and it was a 3-year suspension of licensure and an $8,000 fine, I believe. So I think there's a good reason we place so much emphasis on that. It may be rare, but it's very serious. One recent case I found that caught my eye that was pretty unique from the others was this was in Philadelphia in 2018. A counselor called a former provider of her client and impersonated her client to gain authorization for services. And this was a violation of the ACA code A.7.B, which talks about confidentiality and advocacy. So a counselor should not be advocating for services for their client without the client's consent. I was surprised that the disciplinary action, the results of this case, was a $250 fine and a reprimand on her record. And that was a lot less disciplinary action than I expected. I thought impersonating a client sounded like something that would carry a pretty hefty penalty, but I'm guessing it's because she was advocating that she had a little more leeway there. Now as counselors, we are told by the ACA that we should be self-assessing for self-impairment, and that we should not continue to provide services when we realize that we are impaired. But it's our responsibility to seek assistance and to remediate before continuing services. And one question that came to mind for me had to do with the theme of boundaries, especially as a new counselor. How do you find that balance of gaining a client's trust and connecting with them to a appropriate degree, and finding where that line is of not crossing any professional boundaries and keeping the relationship purely professional? Thank you.